Have you ever watched something that completely rewired your brain chemistry?
A procedural network drama might not be your usual pick, but it's ours.
This is The Buddie System, a 911 deep dive podcast hosted by three friends who have DM'd each other enough character dissertations to earn a PhD in media literacy. I'm Han, coming to you straight from the characters' heads.
I'm Sil, bringing you to the observation deck.
And I'm Rachel, connecting the dots with my red string. With our powers combined,
No stone is left unturned.
and no Buddie is left behind. This episode brought to you by gratuitous superhero references. Welcome to Dispatch. What's on call this week?
This week's episode, we're covering Season 1, Episode 5, titled Point of Origin. The episode was written by Erica Anderson and directed by Gwyneth Horder Payton. The episode originally aired Wednesday, January 31st, 2018.
On to the calls of the week. What should be a happy occasion takes a turn when disaster strikes during the reception of an Indian wedding when the dance floor suddenly collapses. In a flashback to 5 years ago, we see the call come in about Bobby's apartment building fire in St. Paul, Minnesota. A little girl is trapped in her pool when a nearby high-voltage power pole goes down, and a car wash employee gets swept up and stuck in the bristles. Flashover. We're going to start a little differently this week, and I think we're going to talk a little bit about the overarching themes of the episode, so then we can get into like the nitty gritty of it later when we dive into the character arcs. Amen. Amen. I think this is one of my favorite segments because I like seeing how we all maybe connect things in the episode to certain overarching themes, but how we interpret them often is a little different. So there's a lot of overlap there, but I think it shows kind of like our differences and our different perspectives in how we interpret them for different characters or just in general. One of the first themes I believe that we all kind of honed in on was trust and that's a big part of the episode for, I'm pretty sure, all of the characters.
Well, you're so right, Rachel, because one of those sub themes, it's commitment, and we see a lot of different angles of commitment in this episode, for lack of a better word, because I don't. Anyway, so there's commitment, but it also ties into being honest and opening up, especially when it comes to partnerships, which, you know, the 118 has, and then we have like all of these other relationships in the show. You know, we have to be able, or well, they have to be able, not me. I have nothing to do with that. They have to find trust within themselves to trust the other people that they work with or the other people that they're in relationships with to open up and share secrets, including, I don't know, like their identities with other people and trust them to be accepting of them.
Absolutely. Big theme that I noticed is people struggling or not so much struggling with the terrifying or horrifying idea of being known. And if you want to let people or if you don't want to let people, and how that affects the relationships around you and how it affects your own sense of self.
But that kind of goes back to trust as well, because you have to be able to trust someone in order to like let them know you.
Absolutely.
Right? And the trust goes both ways, because you have to trust them to like I was going to say like keep your secrets, but like that's not exactly where I was trying to go. But
well, yeah, but you have to trust them to see who you are and still care about you.
Yeah, that's a good way to put that. And kind of as in a similar vein of like being known and kind of keeping secrets. Again, a lot of these are kind of like overlap. This is a giant, very messy Venn diagram.
That's one, yeah.
What?
I said that's one way of calling it is all. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
A yarn ball of a Venn diagram.
It's like almost a circle. It's like a dodecahedron or something. I don't know. Is that a real shape?
That was a big word.
Thank you.
That was too many syllables for me.
Don't ask me how many sides that has. I don't know. But kind of in the same vein of being known or keeping secrets, there's a lot of references to superheroes in this episode, which I thought was very interesting. And a lot of it touches specifically on one character in particular, and that would be Bobby. But I think if we look at kind of secret identities and superheroes in a more like abstract, kind of like blown out way, where, you know, as firefighters, when they are the superheroes essentially, and when they're out of uniform, that's supposed to be their regular identity, like the Clark Kent to the Superman sort of thing, right? But what I kind of thought of was, is the secret identity the superhero or is it the regular person? So which of those personas is the real identity of that person, or which one is the secret one? If that makes a little sense. I'm sure we'll go over that later.
We'll definitely get into that later on in our character arcs.
Yes. Yeah, we're going to talk about all of these a little more in depth in our character arcs.
Another big thing that we kind of see is kind of putting the question out there if people are capable of change. And I think that kind of ties back into trust and being honest and open, because it's really hard to change if you aren't honest and open or trust yourself to change.
Exactly. Or if something or someone is like holding you back, and to be able to make that kind of change also, which again ties into trust.
Also, tying back into trust, there's a lot of collapsing of foundations in this episode. It's literally and figuratively, especially, again, I'm tying this back into relationships and commitment, but there's a lot of hints and things that tie into that. So it's interesting to get into that in our character arcs.
Yeah. And it's interesting because I feel like this collapse of foundations is kind of what we're referring to it as, is one of the themes that we're able to see kind of physically in a way, like it's represented more physically during some of these emergencies, which is always interesting to me when you can see when you can visually see a reoccurring theme or an allegory for something. And kind of with that as well, there's kind of an element of having the rug pulled out from under you and how quickly things can change in a snap, and kind of how someone handles that change or how they compose themselves in the face of that kind of change as well. So there's change, like individual change, but also like change of your environment or surroundings or circumstances.
And especially how someone reacts to the, again, collapse of their foundation. So we get to see a lot of that in this episode as well.
Who's cooking? So speaking of how people react to things, specifically a collapsing foundation, we want to talk about Bobby.
Oh boy. This is like...
Ah, yes.
Wait, the rise and fall of a Midwest princess.
Is this a movie?
No, this was a Chappell Roan reference to
God.
her album. It's called like The Rise and Fall of a Midwest or a Midwestern Princess. And
I need to listen to all of her other songs aside from the one.
They're so good.
I just thought that was funny. I'm so sorry. Well, because we do kind of like his kind of collapse and rebuilding of himself in that kind of way, like how his foundation collapsed and how he has rebuilt himself, but also how he has to build himself again from the previous episode now that he's relapsed and he's trying to like kind of start from ground zero.
Mm-hmm. Well, he's starting again in that way, but also starting again in that it's the first time that he's letting himself openly care about people and invest in people and think about opening himself up to them in a long time.
Yeah, essentially this is kind of the first of 911's X character begins sort of thing, which is a reoccurring theme that we see that I think they do so beautifully when they really delve into a character's backstory and how they get from, point A to where they are now.
Yeah.
And it's a little different because it's not like a full episode flashback, which we tend to see. I think we see the first, character begins episodes in season 2. And I think that's Hen and Chim. So this is kind of like a mini, like a little Russian doll.
A matryoshka?
Yes, that one. A little Russian doll where it's like...
Here for your Russian references.
A Bobby begins in an episode and that kind of thing.
At the end of the last episode, we saw Bobby asking for help, which you could see as him like opening himself up and trusting. And then kind of the first thing you see him do outside of, just like being a good captain, which we normally see, is him losing his absolute shit on someone, which kind of seems like an overreaction for him, because it is an overreaction for him based on what they've seen from him, because he's normally very, like even keeled, and especially when he is, in captain mode. So he like physically grabs this guy, right? And like gets in his face.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the building owner or something. Actually, it's interesting because this is the second episode in a row where we do have Bobby react in a very aggressive manner and kind of like shoving them up against the wall. Because the last episode it was Buck when he was trying to take a peek into Bobby's book.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's a crack in his foundation.
Exactly.
It's definitely a trauma response.
Yeah, it's triggered.
Yeah, this is a very specific trigger for him because as we like see later in the episode, he has some direct experience with a collapsing foundation, with building that, did not follow its codes, that had disastrous results, not only for Bobby's own family, but hundreds of others.
It's almost more warranted because these people who don't follow these building codes are legitimately putting people in danger
to save some money.
Yeah, which we see like the worst of the worst kind of thing happen, where those shortcuts that are being taken really produce a terrible outcome. And I thought it was so interesting when Bobby realized what had happened, when he saw the really flimsy materials that he recognized. I mean, I guess as a firefighter in general, you kind of have to, you're a little more familiar with like building materials and stuff like that. But Bobby specifically would be, I'm sure, very strict about having things up to code because of what happened in his old apartment building. What he says to the building owner or manager when he says, you know what you did, you're going to jail, that's manslaughter. It's an obvious projection, right?
Oh, yeah.
Because he's reacting very emotionally. He's triggered in this moment. But what he says, you kind of know that he's not just saying it to this guy. It's such an outburst that he's saying it to himself.
For sure. Yeah, I didn't even catch that. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's like, oh, that gives me, honestly, that gave me a little bit of goosebumps, because it's just like,
that's a good catch.
Because he's saying it to this guy who broke the law, but he's essentially saying it to himself as well, because he's still carrying that burden still. I think you said something about that earlier.
Yeah, I was saying one of the themes that I didn't mention, but I had it in my notes, was like carrying a burden. So Bobby, as we see him as this Jesus type character anyway.
We do, yeah.
He's carrying that cross. Like, he ultimately feels very, very responsible of what happened in Minnesota in his past. When it comes to Bobby and when he's carrying like burden, and again, the cross that he's carrying, like literally in the last episode, we see him ask for help, and it's almost like he's trying to have someone help him carry that burden. I guess it was really more of his relapse and sharing that detail with his team. But in this case, when it comes to what happened in Minnesota, he hasn't released that burden to anyone yet, except for right now it's Hot Priest over here.
Yeah.
Except for the Hot Priest.
TM.
Hot Priest, TM. So he's unloading a little bit of that burden to Hot Priest TM, but he hasn't done that with his team at the 118. He hasn't unloaded that kind of burden to them. And he doesn't really want to. And it's interesting because in the, once that building collapsed and Hen is trying to like mediate the situation, he tells her to back off. And Hen is basically like, you you were literally asking me for help. Like, why the 180?
Like 24 hours ago.
Yeah. And that's kind of the conflict that we will not get a resolution on until the end of the episode.
Yeah. And I guess that's also kind of like showing a little bit of cracks in the foundation of the trust between the 118 as well, because Hen is now a little more privy to Bobby's like inner world, but not as much. So Hen wants Bobby to let Hen trust him. If that makes sense. Because like she does.
That's Inception in my brain.
Never mind. I messed that sentence up. Because I feel like she does trust Bobby to an extent, but she is realizing now that Bobby doesn't let himself trust anyone else like the reverse way.
Doesn't trust anyone else with any part of himself that isn't, work Bobby.
Yeah, so she wants him to trust her with that information.
Mm-hmm.
And because she realizes now that he's really not letting anyone in, even though she's kind of like put her foot in the door, that's starting some cracks as well. And we'll talk about that a little later with her conversation. But yeah, it's really like a quick turnaround from the end of last episode where Hen and Buck are consoling Bobby and he's really leaning on them and asking for help. And we see he like once he kind of like composes himself, he doesn't really let himself like utilize that help, especially in a professional capacity at the moment. But
yeah, it's kind of like one step forward, a million steps back with that.
He wants help, but he wants help without having to disclose the parts of himself that he hates, which is like all the parts.
All of it. You just gestured to all of me.
Yeah, that is problematic in and of itself, where it's like he finds himself in a place where he cares about these people and he wants to let them in, but he can't.
Where you said that he kind of wants it both ways. He wants to open himself up a little bit more, but not all of the worst parts of himself. That's because he is so fearful that he'll lose their trust for good. Mm-hmm. And he knows the importance of being a person of authority and being the captain. Like you have to have that trust between your team, because he knows that he's got their backs, but they have to know that he has theirs as well. Mm-hmm. It's a two-way relationship.
Well, I also don't think he feels like he deserves it. There's just a lot of conflicting emotions in him. And when you are someone who is traumatized, very much not healed, like have not worked through it, and you are dealing with a lot of emotions, not only coming up from your trauma, but a lot of emotions that you haven't felt in a long time, like caring about people and wanting to open up and have relationships with people, it is bound to make you blow up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And this is why I think when Bobby is at the church and he's talking to Hot Priest TM, not the Fleabag version, but the other one.
Does this guy have a name or no?
I don't think so.
We need to learn it, or we need to give him a name. Anyways, so when Bobby is at the church, I think this is why he starts off by saying that he's lost, because he's kind of in between a rock and a hard place, right? He wants to be able to change and move forward, but he can't let go of this burden that he's carrying. And inherently, it kind of like becomes a little hurricane of a sense of like a lost identity sort of thing. And this is also where we start really connecting like the superhero idea to Bobby, or at least when Athena says it, when she's talking to Hen, she mentions it.
But yeah, Athena calls Bobby Clark Kent when she's talking to Hen about him and his little blow up. And she's like, oh, Clark Kent, like he blew up. And later in the flashback, we see Bobby refer to himself as Superman. So then you have this dichotomy of like how like Athena is looking at him as like the person behind the mask, like as like the full three-dimensional person, and how Bobby is looking at himself as not even a person, just someone who is only purpose is to help other people. Mm-hmm. Like he doesn't see himself as like having a personal identity outside of doing that, of saving people, of helping people.
Which also sounds like someone else we know very, very well and love and adore. Fuck. Wow, like father, like son, am I right? Mm-hmm.
It's not quite as bad.
It's not exactly. It's kind of for different reasons as well.
I also thought you were talking about Eddie. It sounds way more like him.
Him too. Like father, like son-in-law.
Yeah, I don't think Buck hates himself.
No. Different ways.
Love me anyway.
Choose me. Love me.
He doesn't hate himself. He has big self-worth issues, for sure.
That's what I meant, yeah. Similar flavor, different.
Yeah. It's 2 degrees separated, I guess. Where it's like, it's self-worth issues, for sure.
Yeah.
But it's a different root
Like,
cause.
he doesn't hate himself, but he thinks people hate him.
Yeah, well, he thinks people only want to use him for...
Exactly.
If he's useful, or if he is useful.
Yeah. But I did want to point out, going back to Bobby, you mentioned during the flashback, he says that he relates himself to Superman. And of course, that is in the past. But also when he's talking to the priest, he still considers himself a Superman or superhero, even though he doesn't say it outright this time. But he does say that, the only way he thought he could pull off leading a crew was by shielding them from his personal damage. And that sounds very superhero-y, something like I'm going to, I'm bulletproof. That kind of situation that feels like he's still positioning himself as this protector, which is inherently what a superhero is, as opposed to a vigilante.
Yeah, I also think he just, not only that he's looking at himself that way as a necessity, but also that's how he wants to look at himself. He doesn't want to look at the Clark Kent side of him. He doesn't want to see it. He doesn't want to acknowledge it. He would much rather focus on the part of himself that I don't think he necessarily likes it, but he thinks has a purpose.
Yeah, because then he has to admit to himself that he's just human. By being reluctant to admit that he's human and he's not a superhero and he doesn't have that superpower, he's also inherently refusing to release himself of that responsibility, because he puts it all on his shoulders, even though we see that, it was the space heater, it was the building that was not up to code, and if the building was up to code, that probably wouldn't have even happened. But he takes all of that responsibility on himself, which is what a superhero does. They are responsible for their city or the country or whatever, or their neighborhood, friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, whatever amount of space, metaphorical or physical, that they put upon themselves to be responsible for. And that's, I think, one of the reasons that he can't let go of the of thinking of himself as a superhero, because then he releases himself of that responsibility and that acknowledgement that it's not necessarily his fault is what he needs to incorporate into himself to be able to heal fully. And I'm not sure he ever really does, honestly.
No, it's partly his fault, obviously.
Well, yes, but he takes on a lot of, if we're talking about hypotheticals, even if the space heater ignited, if the building was up to code and they had proper sprinkler systems, probably wouldn't have even happened.
But just the sheer death toll, and that it included his wife and children, is he's never going to be able.
He's never going to be able to let that go fully.
No. Think about if that happened to you. I don't know what amount of therapy you would have to do to be able to let go of the burden of guilt of that.
And again, that's part of being human. I'm not sure that's something you could ever truly let go, but you don't have to put yourself up in your mind as I'm this superhero. I should have protected people and instead I hurt them, because I think that kind of thinking is what's so damaging. Also, also in the way of thinking of himself as the superhero, he also kind of thinks himself as the villain, right? Because when he kind of drops the bomb that I killed my own family. And so essentially that is him kind of taking his mask off, which is a trope of superheroes and supervillains, right? Because you're taking the mask off, so you're seeing the identity underneath. Especially with, I keep thinking of Scooby-Doo, which isn't necessarily superheroes, but you take the mask off and you unmask the villain, and he's kind of parading himself as the hero because he sees himself as the hero, but he also sees himself as the villain. So it's very dual-sided.
So it's interesting that you brought up the superhero versus the supervillain when it comes to Bobby, because what I was going to say is kind of similar. I was thinking about the conversation that he had with his wife and how I mean, I think he calls himself Superman there, but before he has that last conversation with his wife where they were actually fighting, the act of what he's doing, which is going into a different apartment in the same building and drinking, and the reveal that he was also taking Oxycontin. It's just interesting that he calls himself Superman, but he's doing the opposite of what a superhero would initially do. He's deconstructing himself in a way. So he has a superhero identity, but underneath he also has his twisted, darker identity, which I don't want to call him a villain.
Right. He kind of thinks of himself as such, a little.
He does think of himself as such, but his superhero identity has been tainted with all of the things that he's been doing.
So, you have...
Galaxy brain
blast,
gasm, whatever. At some point while Rachel was talking, back to, because we're in our superhero era always. So is Bobby, apparently. So I thought it was weird how Athena called him Clark Kent and Bruce Wayne in the same conversation, but I just realized why. Because I was thinking while you were talking that, he says that he killed his family. He didn't kill his family. He did a thing, and then there was a series of events, and then the fire killed them. He did not kill them. He would never be found guilty in a court of law for murdering anyone there. But Bruce Wayne, if you know anything about him, he blames himself for killing his parents. And do you want to know how his parents died? It's he wanted to go see a movie, and then his parents get shot on the way home from the movie. So he blames himself, and he carries that around and makes it his entire fucking identity. And he dresses like a goddamn bat, and literally is just, he's a traumatized middle-aged man punching other people for the greater good. But because he's trying to, I'm not saying that there are not other motivations, but underneath it all, it's all this kind of I have to do so much good to try and run away.
Balance the scales
from having murdered my parents. And Bobby is in this weird position where he already was a superhero, when this happened. So can you imagine that kind of thing happening when you're already a superhero?
Yeah.
That's insane.
Not to mention what we find out in season 7, we find out that his dad was an alcoholic. His dad was also pretty abusive, but it's also the way how his dad dies. And I think Bobby blames himself there as well. So
too.
So it ties into that Bruce Wayne thing.
That's not even. Oh my God.
I didn't even think about that.
I didn't even think of that. That's
about it
so
just
good.
now.
I was thinking about other parts of that, but yeah. That's fucking wow.
Oh my gosh.
But what we learn in season 7 is just, it makes his trauma, which was already so unbelievably deep and hard, so much worse. Because you see that his father was an alcoholic, but he had this hero worship for his father.
And his dad was also a superhero, being a firefighter as well.
Exactly. So when his mom left with his brother and wanted to take him with him, he was like, no, dad needs me. And so he stayed because he was like, I am the rock. I am the support. I am.
Oh my
right?
God.
So it's not even the parentification. It's just the him from, I don't even know how old he was supposed to be in that episode. It was young.
12? It was 8, 10,
It was
12.
It was young, elementary school young. So from such a young age, he has been putting this burden on himself of having to, even before his dad died, of caring, for this person who would not face their own addiction and their own problems and was, emotionally abusive to him. And he took that all on himself. It was every bad thing that happened coming out of his dad was his fault. That was before he died. And then he fucking died and he blamed himself for that. And then we see little baby Bobby drinking. So then my whole thing is how long has he been an addict? You know what I mean? Because I know that you have a propensity, people genetically have a propensity to be an addict.
Not necessarily, but it is
right.
Genetic.
But how long was he struggling with it? Right? We see him at the end of that episode, taking a drink, after the EMTs take his dad's corpse away. we see him drinking.
Mm-hmm.
And then when he tells Marcy, you know, this isn't who I am. I'm not this guy. I can beat it. I can do that and that. He's been fighting that for so long. How he is so deeply buried under the I'm not this guy.
Mm-hmm.
But he is that guy. He's been that way since like 1981, something like that, if not earlier. Like how much does he have to convince himself that he's not that guy? That's why he has to take on that superhero persona.
It's the not only not convincing himself that like he isn't an addict and he doesn't have a problem and that he can just like raw dog addiction and like get over it, which is not a thing. And it's not only that, but it's just him, you know, like completely just saying like, I am not a vulnerable human person with weaknesses, with flaws, with
I am made of stone. I am made of steel.
like, this isn't who I am. Yes, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
I am your rock. I am everyone's rock. Because he's like, that's who he's been like since he was like a
forever
little fucking kid. I was crying.
Bobby makes me sad.
I was not like crying. Like I was tearing up because I was like, I already did my makeup for this episode. So I was trying really hard to not like fully cry. But yeah, I was like, wow, this is a lot watching it after. I mean, it's a lot regardless. But like after knowing what we do from season 7, it's just fucking heartbreaking.
Not to mention also what he tells Athena in season 7 during Ash's Ash, where he was like, I was supposed to die. Because, you know, we have the what do we have in season 7? We have the book, we have the book reveal with all of the names and from the apartment fire. Like thinking between season 1 and season 7, Bobby, it's kind of like, dude, how much have you been like
keeping
inside, but also like bearing that cross? Like that cross is like extra big. Like it's like megaton. It's the size of the apartment building.
Super mega turbo cross.
Oh god.
But also, so to add that, where it's like he's like, I'm not supposed to be here because he, you know, had the plan to be gone.
Yeah.
When he finished, you know, like
filling up those 148 names.
Yeah.
But we zoom in when he leaves after the fight with Marcy on his keys, right? And then he tries to go to his other apartment, but he doesn't have the keys. So he goes to the roof. If he had had his keys, he would have died. He would have been the first person that died.
I thought of it more, he would have been able to stop it.
I was about to say the same thing.
If he were able to be awake.
Because what? He was already inebriated, right? Like, it's too late.
He was already inebriated. Like, he would have been passed out. He would have literally just, like, burnt to death because of how out of code everything was. There were there was nothing to stop the spread of that fire. So and he was sitting right next to it in a sleeping bag, which is, I'm sure, what accelerated it super fast. Which is, how the fire even started, because it was the spark directly onto the sleeping bag.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I put that in my notes. Like, how many times has he relived that same sequence of events and thought, like, if I had just gotten my keys, one of two things would have happened. Either I would have died with it, or I would have been able to stop it. Like, how many times has he run through that in his mind?
Where it's like, how close he was to getting into the apartment, to getting them, and then the literal foundation collapsed, literal rug being pulled out from underneath him.
And also just like the whole idea of, you know, the spark catching flame goes for how things can change in an instant. Everything was, well, it wasn't fine between them, but
his family was fine.
His family was fine. And then all of a sudden, just literally in the blink of an eye, essentially just gone. This is making me really sad.
Okay, but like, it's so sad, but it also is like, it's two things. It's so sad, but it also is showing how fucking good they are at storytelling.
Yes.
At character building, at world building, at following through. Yeah. Like, we're on the 5th episode of this entire show, and they're still planting more seeds and throwbacks that just like make it
season 7
so much bigger 6 seasons later. Like, that is incredible. One of the reasons I've fell in love with the show is because they're so good at this shit. And then the other one is that it makes me so happy that he found the 118 and that he found Athena, and that he let himself that he let himself have that he decided to throw away that fucking book and let himself live and let people in.
Yeah.
He's still struggling. Like, we still see that a lot in season 7, obviously. But, like, he built this. Like, he allowed himself to feel and to let people in and to care about people. And he built these relationships and this family.
He built a new foundation on the cracked one.
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
And it's stronger
Yeah.
than he could have ever imagined because he allowed himself that.
He allowed himself, he looked at the terrifying thought of being known. And he let himself, like, for him, that, like, I feel like for anyone, you know, there is some extent where you're like, it's scary to let people in. It's scary
to lay yourself out.
To let people know you. Exactly. It's scary to be vulnerable because people can reject you. People can,
Judge
even
you.
people who you thought cared about you, if you let them see more and more of yourself, they could reject you. And he let himself be known.
Mm-hmm.
And now he has an amazing life, an amazing family, an amazing wife, and 3 kids. Well, 3 and some change. I'm gonna throw Eddie in there too.
Oh, of course.
That's his son-in-law.
And Robbie.
Yeah. This is the son-in-law.
And Robbie.
And
And
Robbie.
Robbie. It's the spouse of the oldest child is always the father's favorite.
Love that.
Anyway, that's in retrospect. Wow.
You're welcome.
I know we want to like keep moving forward, but I did want to mention some stuff about like during the flashback when Bobby woke up on the roof and tried to save them, and as the floor was collapsing, he wanted to save them, and as the firemen that were on duty, and he was like, give me your gear. I'm a firefighter. I can do that. He couldn't do that because he didn't have his superhero uniform on. He he couldn't.
Oh my
he
God.
couldn't save them because he wasn't.
He didn't have his superpowers.
He didn't have his superpowers. Exactly.
Wait, hold on. Is his addiction his kryptonite?
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%.
Because also he mentions, I think he's talking to Hot Priest over there. He's like, you know,
He needs a name.
So when he's talking to Hot Priest over there, he's he mentions something about the sprinklers, and it's kind of like if he wasn't so inebriated, he would have noticed that the building wasn't up to code. The sprinklers weren't hooked up. So Superman over here, he failed, and he's always going to see it that way.
I don't know if I wanted to say it here because I want to keep going, but I'm still thinking about the flashback when he has his second apartment that I think Marcy calls his like drug den or something like that.
Yeah.
That is his bat cave. That's part of his secret identity.
His fortress of solitude.
No, his fortress of solitude is the roof, and I'm going to go into that later.
Oh, God.
Oh, Lord.
I'm going to go into that in deep dive because I thought that was really interesting. But essentially, that was like the old fortress of solitude, and now the church is his new fortress of solitude. But there's someone there that he shares it with, so it's not as solitude-y as it once was.
I'm sorry. This is the whole point of the fortress of solitude is to be in solitude. But yeah,
I know, but I have a reason.
He's in solitude with his thoughts and Jesus.
Okay, I have more of a thing about the roof referencing the church as the new fortress of solitude is because the fortress of solitude is where Superman learns about his true identities and all of that stuff, which is, if we're continuing from from episode 1 about how Hot Priest TM is the audience surrogate, right? Because after the flashback, it pans to the priest. He's like dabbing his eyes with tissues because he's learning about this just as we are. So we are learning about Bobby's origin story, the superhero origin story, point of origin. So that is why I considered the church. The new Fortress of Solitude. It's more for us to learn.
Point of origin.
The origin story.
I'd say it's a superhero origins. Well, I guess it's like the current iteration of his superhero origin story, right?
Exactly.
I love when we go, oh.
Oh, yeah.
Actually, I did that too because I didn't think about that until the second time I watched it. And I was like,
nice.
Oh, I get it now. Because I was trying to understand like point of origin, but also like point of origin, like in a fire where the fire originates. There's layers. It's an onion. Sometimes they give us titles that are really like, let go. And it's like, oh, I wonder what that's going to be about. It's going to be about letting go. But then they give us some episode titles that are like point of origin, like superhero origin story, but also like fire point of origin. And it's like, I like those a little better.
You know what's really funny? When I was doing my notes for this episode, I did not even think about the title because I was like, I
didn't either.
I want to focus on something that's not the title because I always feel like it's so on the nose. And now you just like...
Most of the time it is.
And most of the time it is. This one's actually
sometimes there's an extra layer.
This one's actually one of those where there's an extra layer because, I mean, yeah, it's like, there is a telling of an origin story, but it's kind of like, I wasn't connecting it to the whole superhero thing, even though I know they've mentioned superheroes like 2 or 3 times in this episode. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of pop culture references.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm dumb or if this is just, a different interpretation, but like...
You're not dumb.
I completely dismissed, like, about this specific thing. I completely dismissed the title because I was like, oh, it's one of the obvious things. Because I was like, oh, it's the point of origin for, like, Bobby's relationship with the Winnie teen, like, actually letting them in. And it's the point of origin for Buck and Abby's relationship actually happening.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
There's layers.
Yeah. So I was like, it's not that deep. Just moved on. Let this be a lesson. It is always that deep, bitch.
Especially in 911.
Exactly.
Yeah. They give you one of these like lame, you think it's gonna be a lame episode title and it's actually like, whoa. Because I didn't even think of it in terms of like the origin of like a more real relationship with the 118 or like the point of origin with like Abby and Buck or anything like that, or even the point of origin with learning about Hen. And we not only do we learn about her ex Ava, but also like we get our origin of Hen's family life as well.
Right.
So it's like so many layers.
Oh yeah, that's true. I keep forgetting.
We finally get to see Karen.
The woman that you are, Karen.
Our number one fan.
Wow. Okay,
Karen.
We gotta wrap up Bobby.
I think we've kind of touched on it a little bit about him, this being his point where he decides that he has to let people in. And that kind of comes to fruition at the car wash call, which is, oh God, we needed some levity in some of these episodes.
Can I just say, before we get to the car wash, we see him flash forward back to the present of him telling the story. Back to the Future 2. But we see him finishing telling the story to the priest, and the priest says something like, if you don't, like, you've been shouldering the weight of your sins alone. Well, I don't think he says sins. That's what I wrote. But he's been shouldering the weight of his sins alone. And he says, if you don't trust your friends to see and know you honestly, completely, you don't really have any friends. Give them a chance. You're allowed to be human.
I loved that line. You're allowed to be human.
A+ priesting.
Good job. Good job, Hot Priest TM.
You're not just
the only priest.
The only priest. No. We cannot forget Daredevil priest. Why can't Father Langford, right?
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
The only priest in 911, I guess.
Yeah.
Kind of literally one of the only ones we see. But yeah, I love that whole line about you're allowed to be human, because it tells Bobby he doesn't have to hold himself to this literal superhuman standard, because it gets so lonely. which is a lot of times one of the main conflicts of a superhero is that they have to carry this burden. And I think we keep mentioning it, but I think that was one of the themes that we picked out for the pilot episode. I think I called it like Atlas Shrugged or something really pretentious.
It was so smart.
It was pretentious. Let's be honest. But
I was so angry I didn't think of it. I was so
first
upset.
episode or the pancake episode?
No, I think it was pilot.
Oh no, wait. No, that was the pancake episode.
Was it?
Yes.
Atlas Shrugged?
Yes. Yeah,
Are you
because
sure?
listen, Syl and I are thinking of Edmundo in that scene. Stand over there.
Oh, Edmundo. I miss you.
Oh.
She's still looking.
It's for this episode you guys haven't heard and will never hear because we're gonna redo it.
Anyways, I had a really fantastic theme that I picked out and I called it Atlas Shrugged, and it was all about like carrying burdens. And I thought I was so smart, and it was a little pretentious.
You are so smart.
But
It was a little. The two are not mutually exclusive.
it was like poetic.
Okay? It was.
It was good. It was so good. Because I didn't know anything about that. I learned something new.
Anyways, so carrying a burden like Atlas, the myth of Atlas, carrying the world on his shoulders, that kind of thing. Maybe we'll release that little portion because I thought that was really good. Anyways, so I think that is a major theme of like 911 in general. But yeah, holding yourself up to a superhuman standard when you're allowed to be human. Let's go.
I have a note that should have gone when we were talking about sad stuff, but I can't not say it. So we'll cut it and put it back there. And then we can just talk about the car wash, which is funny and great. But the only thing I wrote down about Bobby's fight with Marcy is when she said, "I love you. I'll forgive you for this, just not tonight." Mm-hmm. And I want to know how many times he has repeated that in his head.
Because he doesn't get another night. He
doesn't get another night. And so he feels like he can never be forgiven. Yeah.
He doesn't get the redemption.
No.
And
so there's so
like
many layers of why he
to,
feels like he can't ever be forgiven. Yeah.
Ugh.
Anyway, the car wash.
Now for some hee hee ha ha. I think one thing that we keep talking about in the last few episodes is how sad these episodes are, especially for like a first season, especially the first half of a first season. And I think this is one of the first moments in a few episodes where we genuinely get some levity with the guy at the car wash that just gets like wrapped up in his own bristle, like isn't truly hurt or anything, like it's not a tragic. It's just one of those calls that is just a little silly, goofy, and someone being a little dumb. And it starts, and I love that it starts with Buck laughing because he's watching the security footage of how this guy got tangled up in the big frost bristle things, and he starts laughing.
His laugh is so stupid.
His laugh is so great.
I
love it. Hen's laugh or Aisha's laugh is so
I love it.
Contagious.
It's so good.
Also,
it's so good.
And she tries to fight against it a little bit. She's like, this is so unprofessional. But she succumbs to it as well. And so does Bobby, but also so does the car wash owner as well.
Oh, yeah.
And it just I really loved laughter as a human response, right?
Yeah.
Because inherently a very human thing. So all of these people, while they're in the uniform and they're being like this big, superhero persona, right, as the firefighters on duty, they're reacting just as any regular person would.
Right.
Like, again, Bobby allowing himself to be human. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of like, I'll mention this again later, but when Buck is talking to Abby about the adrenaline thing and her hands weren't shaking and most people's hands shake, that adrenaline is a natural human response. Laughter is a superpower too, because it's healing. Yeah. And shared laughter, I found an interesting, I think it was a study, and I'll mention it again later about shared laughter, but laughter and shared laughter specifically, it's an indicator of closeness, of social support and quality of relationship, and them sharing in this laughter together, this experiencing this moment of joy and uninhibitedness, right? It opens themselves up because they bond over this.
Yeah,
you know?
I don't know if this is if I can tack this onto your later thought or if I can just say it here, but it's Hen, Bobby, and Buck in the fire station, and Buck is replaying his day, his night, or whatever that he was going through with Abby, because we're gonna get into that too. But like Hen and Bobby share this look, they're like smiling, they're like kind of like laughing at Buck's little antics and stuff like that, but then immediately they're like, it's kind of to your point about what you're saying, that it's healing. It's kind of like, but wait, there's still this barrier between us right now.
Close the cracks of that foundation. It helps.
No, but it doesn't yet. It doesn't yet because they're so stubborn.
Yeah,
because they look at each other and then they're like, like
you're talking about earlier. Got it.
Yeah, earlier.
Yeah.
I'm talking about earlier. So like,
yeah,
it's like it's there. It's kind of like they're reaching, but then immediately they remember that they're not exactly in a good place.
Like Hen starts laughing at him, like she starts to smile, like she's gonna laugh, and then immediately is like, oh, actually, no, I'm still mad.
Yeah,
still worried, like upset, confused, irritated. Like I feel like it's a whole jumble of emotions, not just mad, but yeah.
And then obviously after they watch that security footage, that moment of laughter, like I think Bobby in that moment like was able to kind of release some of the stuff that he's been holding inside.
It is a release.
Yeah, it's definitely a release. And I know like a little bit after, I don't remember if it was before or after, sometime probably after he says he and Hen basically make up and that he's going to basically let her in. I just want to point out that I know we've mentioned this probably in our season 7 wrap about how Bobby's the glue.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We also said how Buck is the glue.
Mm-hmm.
And that brings them together or keeps them together, even though he doesn't know that he's actually doing it. So in this instance, like his antics, I feel like kind of brought them back together because he's also the first one who pointed out that, oh, it's cold in here.
Yeah. And so he was like, well, I'm going to fix that.
Like, what a way to break the ice.
And he brings them together to like watch this like security footage, and he's like, look, ha. And then everyone just like laughs. But again, it's not something that I think he knows he's doing. But Buck is also the glue. Shut up.
I think that comes naturally to him.
Yeah.
In so many ways.
Yes.
But I think he can also acknowledge like this might help.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's not like scheming, but it'll probably be like, this is funny. Oh, if I do this, like maybe that'll like it's. But
I guess what I'm saying is,
he also just wants to share it anyways.
Yeah.
But I guess what I'm saying is he doesn't, because I'm about to go into Buck and I'm about to go into a tangent, but like I feel like he doesn't realize how important he is. Even though he does all of these things, he doesn't realize how that impacts other people. I don't think. Like, yeah, he probably knows that he's doing it and he's bringing people together because he has done that in like future episodes, but he doesn't realize how much that impacts the people he's doing that for, because he still has these feelings of he still has self-worth issues and stuff like that.
How pivotal a pillar he is in that foundation.
Yeah.
Is
that what you mean?
Hey, foundation.
Hey.
Because he's just happy to be there.
I know.
Yeah.
We're happy that he's there.
Always fixing shit. Oh, he's the fixer. He likes to fix things.
He does like to fix things. Just to get back to Bobby so we can be finished with him. No, it's fine. We can always talk about Buck. It will never upset me. But I loved this scene at the end, like not just because they made up, but because, Hen like acknowledges like I've never seen this side of you. Like I've never seen you laugh. Like I've never basically saying, like, I've never seen a facet of you that isn't just like Bobby, the captain.
Is that free?
Yeah. And he's like, I wasn't always like this. And it's not, his story, but it's something. And this is another point where it made me cry. And he was like, let's go back to the firehouse and I'll make you something nice and I'll introduce you to someone. And she's like, who? And he says, me. And then I
love that.
Cried.
It's like a cheesy line, but in the context of everything else, it holds so much weight.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right? Like, yeah. Like it could have been acted or come off like really cheesy.
Mm-hmm.
Which I think, again, is something that 911 also does well. It gives you something that could come off really corny and cheesy, but because of the surrounding context, it gives
and the actors, yeah,
and the actors, of course, it gives it so much more emotional weight.
Yeah, for sure,
and it means so much. But honestly, who knew there was so much important about it? The silly car wash call. This is why we're doing this, because we can read so much into something like that.
Give us something you think can't be read into, and we will talk for 30.
We'll write a book
at least
about it. So I think we're.
So speaking of Hen,
yeah.
Speaking of Hen, who we finally get to talk about.
We've been waiting so long.
Hen.
It's been 84 years.
It sure has.
Hen.
Ugh. She's
love
the
it.
best.
We finally, there have been like little hints here and here about Hen, mostly in her relationships to the other characters, like her relationship to Athena and then Chimney, of course, and how she interacts with Buck and Bobby. And we finally get more insight on her character. Thank God. Because we've been like, they've been breadcrumbing us on Hen, and we finally get to really get into her character a little bit. So the first
They've been boys clubbing us until now.
Well, no.
Just a wee bit.
We have Athena.
But I just feel like proportionally.
Yeah.
That like the big ABC arcs tend to be.
Oh, we have Abby too, guys.
Does she count?
Yeah. She's the C.
She's the
of the
first
ABC
responder.
I mean, technically there's AAB because we've got Athena, Abby, and Bobby.
Oh my God.
I think one of the first things that besides the call at the wedding when Hen is trying to rein Bobby in as he goes off again on that building owner. The next time we see her, I think, is when she's catching up with Athena, and I really love their relationship.
Mm-hmm.
I want to know how long they've been friends. I want like a Athena and Hen Begins episode.
I mean, we do get to see a lot of that in Hen Begins.
In Hen Begins,
Athena invites her out to drinks.
I kind of assumed that was essentially where that.
But I want to see the in between of that, and then them being like besties.
Well, I guess that's where trust comes in, because Hen does trust Athena with. It's really interesting, actually, now I think about it. Like Athena and Hen do trust each other as best friends. They really get into their own personal lives, what they're thinking. It's so nice to see that Hen has someone that she can just hash things out with and get advice on, and same with Athena. They do that for each other, so it's nice to see.
Yeah. It's like they act as the other's kind of like outside third party sort of situation, because we know Hen is very close and besties with Chimney as well, but it's a little different when you have your best friend working right alongside you as opposed to another best friend or
who's a
very good friend
party with
exactly
no invested interest.
As a third party outsider with absolutely no personal interest in the matter is my favorite quote from She's the Man.
Oh, but Athena will.
She does have personal interest in the matter, of course. And it's funny because like those worlds are going to collide, right? A little closer, but they still remain kind of like steadfast in their relationship dynamic going forward. And yeah, it's a great thing that we see Athena obviously knows a lot about Hen and her personal life, because before, and I thought this was a great use of exposition, just as an aside, because Athena picks up on Hen saying, no, there's no trouble at home yet, anyways. So Athena picks up on that, and she's immediately indicating to
a dog with a bone.
Well, she is a dog with a bone. First of all, her little like detective brain is going off, but it kind of sets up more of Hen's personal life, because Athena is the one that mentions, like, isn't your wife gonna know something? I forget the exact quote. And then
she was like, what does your wife think? Basically. Yeah.
And it also sets up what we're kind of supposed to think about Eva already, right? So we have that kind of, our hackles are raised, or our suspicions are up already, because if Athena's suspicions are up, and we know she's
sus,
like a dog with a bone, and she gets to the bottom of things.
Yeah.
Now we are
so
sus.
we have to be we have to keep our, we have to not be so open to like bringing Eva in when she's introduced. Like, we already kind of have a wall up, which goes back to trust issues and stuff like that. Like, we as the audience already have trust issues to this character, and it's like, well, what did she do to our Hen? Someone that we've already developed.
Can you fight?
A relationship with. And this is also where, we see some of those cracks forming from Hen's perspective between her and Bobby, because Hen gets to hash that out. And it's interesting, though, because she also kind of reiterates what Chimney says in Next of Kin 2 episodes ago, when he really blows up at Bobby about, they don't know anything about him. And when Bobby was being critical about Chimney's relationship with Tatiana. So that also like act as a foreshadowing that comes to fruition in this episode too. I really love when they just like
interconnect,
lay some groundwork and then expand on it later on.
They do it a lot, and they do it well.
Yeah.
That's why the show is so good. Because they know what they're doing.
But anyways, to get into more of Hen's character, and
I just wanted to say, I know that we did cover like a lot of that conversation, but I wanted to specifically point out the part where she's saying, like, I don't like it's like I don't even know who he is, like I don't even know who I'm working for, which brings us to our like
identity issues.
Well, the identity issues, but the ordeal of being known, and then trust issues. And Athena is like, well, immediately like, well, I'm like riding the desk, but I can do a background check. And that would have been so easy for Hen to say yes. And like I want to know. And I feel like she does want to know for 2 reasons. And one is because she cares about Bobby and wants him to open up and trust her, but also she wants the tea. She just likes to know. But so I think it says a lot that she says like, no. Like immediately, like she doesn't hesitate to be like, no, that's okay. Because, even though Bobby hasn't given her a reason to lately, she trusts him and is putting trust in him that he like hopefully, or maybe more hope than trust, that he will, actually let her help and open up.
No, so that's also interesting, because her not wanting Athena to do that, I also think it speaks on
like Hen's character.
Well, I think it ties into what we see in the next scene. I don't know if this is what you were thinking, but ties into her wanting to believe the best in people.
I'll probably get back to it too.
Okay.
I'll probably get back to it. So.
Yeah.
We'll circle back around.
So anyway, back to jail.
Okay, so next we see Hen visiting Eva at the correctional facility. Obviously, we already know what we're supposed to think about, or how we're supposed to think about Eva. Obviously, all of that is not great.
Yeah, we kind of have a preconceived notion Eva is not.
No, and honestly, she proves it too, because I think there's a point where she does ask about Denny, but she doesn't call him Denny. She calls him something else, which is interesting.
I think it was Diesel.
Yeah, she called him Diesel.
Yeah. Which also just goes to show like how, you know, kind of out of the loop she is, and how Hen it's not that she's like obscuring parts of her life. Well, she kind of wants to keep that separation. She wants to keep, you know, that part of her life far removed from Ava.
Yeah, she doesn't want Ava around her kid or her wife, or really around her either. I think this is just like a loyalty, like sense of like obligation, like
sense of duty. Yeah.
Hoping for the best, wanting to believe in someone, you know, and then still like
they've changed.
Yes, wanting to believe they changed, and then still wanting to be there for believing or hoping that they change, but still wanting to be there for someone, even though that they've proven time and time again that they do not deserve it. But you're hoping that they will change.
And it's funny that she says, well, that Eva says to Hen, "Oh, you know me," you know, when she was asking Hen to basically don up the uniform and kind of vouch for her to
perform.
Yeah.
Oh.
And it's kind of like, well, yeah, I do know you, and you're not that great. But
also I don't know you currently because like we haven't spoken in months and months. So like,
yeah, I wanted to kind of go into very briefly like that dichotomy of Eva saying all in that same like little, it's not like a full monologue, but that little speech that she has that she says like, you know me, you better than anyone else who has ever known me. But then she also says like, but I've changed, I'm better. So like if Hen is supposed to know her, what parts of her does she really know? Because is she trying to say like she knows the core of, like Hen knows the core of Ava, and is the core of someone something that can be changed? I'm explaining this poorly, but that dichotomy of what if Ava has changed so significantly, what part of Hen, or what part does Hen still truly know? You know, and I guess that does kind of question like if a person can change, is it just like a surface level change, or does like the core part of them change, that foundational part of their identity, something? I don't know. I'm mixing a whole bunch of themes together, but I feel like that's something.
Well, I also feel like it ties in because like it's just like multi-layered, but like we don't have the full story yet of like what the hell happened there. But you know, what we have is enough to imply that like something went really bad because these two used to be in a relationship, and now
she's in jail,
is married to another person, raising the child, like adopted and raising the child of her ex, who is in jail. So something obviously went very wrong there, which is implying that like if she was like building a life with someone, in a relationship with someone, and then they did something that sent them to jail for a long time that made them not want to like sit around and wait, that it was something bad, and that it was probably something that they were like, did I ever know this person? Did I really ever know them? So I think Hen makes some good faces in this scene, and one of them is when she's like, you know me, and it's like, do I know?
Yeah. And it's like you may know the heart and the intentions of someone, but if their actions don't line up to that, how does that get incorporated into is someone's identity what they intend or what they act upon?
Yeah.
You know? So which part of that like weighs more heavily in the knowing?
I still found it interesting that this woman called her ex, who is a black woman, to ask her to come and like just do shit for her, to perform, to use her. And she's like chilling out in cornrows. Thought that was interesting in a choice of the character and also costume design, you know, cultural appropriation and trying to use her for, you know, her status in the community and her good standing.
Yeah, I think I don't feel like I can speak as much about the other stuff just beyond what I've seen from like Orange is the New Black forever ago. But but I do think you make a really interesting point about asking for Hen to perform when she asks Hen to speak at her parole hearing, and she gives the reasoning because Hen is a respected member of the community and she can wear her uniform. Mm-hmm. So that's Hen putting on her superhero uniform and putting on the superhero persona to do good, to do something for the community, right?
Yeah, it's very much... I
explained that poorly again, but...
No, it's sorry, my brain cogwheels are just turning. It's very much like I feel like Hen would have found it like, or maybe this is projection. I would have found it like a better request. It was just like, can you give me like a character, is the word?
Testimony?
Yeah, whatever.
Reference? Something like that.
Yeah, like a good character reference. Mm-hmm. You know, as someone who knew me before this.
Yeah.
Who was in a relationship with me, who was very close with me. And instead it's, can you give me a good character reference because...
In uniform.
In uniform. You know, at the, what is it? Her...
Parole hearing.
Yes, her parole hearing. Oh my God, words. So yeah, it's very much just not like like, can you just like put on a costume and perform for me? It's like, she doesn't actually care about like, you know, the relationship they had and, you know, like you cared about me. And I would really appreciate it if you could do this for me. You know, as someone who cared about me, it's very much like, as someone who is, you know, completely removed from who she is as a person and who their relationship was. Like, it just...
Yeah, and I mean, I kind of get where you're going. I think we'll see... I was trying to relate it to something about, like, essentially asking, like, a superhero to put on a show with their superpowers or something for more, like, selfish purposes, essentially. I was trying to work on that metaphor. It hasn't fully developed yet. But I think it was Scylla, you mentioned earlier that Bobby's addiction is his kryptonite. Eva is Hen's kryptonite. Because she can't...
Unfortunate.
She can't fully cut that cord. Right? And we see that also when we finally see Karen. And it's Hen and Karen in the park. And they're, you know, Hen tells her what's happened. And Karen is, again, like Athena, fully aware of the situation. So it does show that Hen trusts both Athena and Karen. I mean, you kind of have to when you're in a committed marital relationship, hopefully. And Hen kind of like goes to bat for Ava, like, she's not as bad as you think, but Karen says she's worse. And so you can see that this is like the crack in their foundation.
Yep.
Where Karen is fully aware of the situation and knows that because of who Hen is, like her character, she can't fully walk away from Eva as much as she wants to. And that shows in kind of an interesting parallel or mirror of Eva saying that Hen knows her more than anyone else. Karen knows Hen more than anyone else. So that's an interesting parallel there.
Yeah, and Karen names it, right? She says, Eva is Hen's great first love. I believe that was the quote. So therefore, equating that to Eva is Hen's kryptonite.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, since we're talking about Karen now, we see a lot of the themes in this one single conversation with the two of them. We see that, you know, there is trust, they have a commitment, they are married, and we see that, you know, Hen had the option to keep this secret, and she did for a little bit, but she is, you know, ultimately
she came clean.
She trusts
her
open
wife and honest about it, and you know, then we're touching base on the horrifying idea of being known, where it's like one of the reasons she didn't want to tell Karen is because Karen knows her so well and like knew it was going to be an issue with maybe not so much trust, but it was going to cause some
well, Karen doesn't trust Eva. She trusts
but not it wouldn't be a trust issue with Hen, but it would be an issue. Like it's a sore spot. Like it's I don't know. I don't want to say like a crack in their foundation, but it's definitely
it's something.
It's like a rusty nail in their foundation. It's like a
here we go again.
It's like a support beam that is rusting.
I like that. I mean, we were just going for the metaphors, but yeah. Yeah. I also really think it's interesting because we're talking about, you know, Hen being open and Hen trying to be open and trying to like, you know, Hen like wanting to be open and wanting to be trustworthy, but also while also trusting Karen fully and bringing in all of these themes. And Eva is the kryptonite. Visually, when we cut to Hen and Karen in the park, Hen is in full like superhero disguise mode, you know, like the Marvel when they just put on a nondescript baseball cap and sunglasses and they're good. And it's like or like
their schmedium shirt.
Yeah. Or like Clark Kent with his glasses and everyone's like, how could
it's a completely different person.
Yeah, you can't tell. Like but she so
at least Tony Stark tried to put a hoodie on.
All right. So visually using that as like a visual metaphor, she is leaned forward kind of away from Karen, even as she's like bearing her soul or like opening herself up to Karen in this way. She is leaning forward away from Karen and she's got like this cool jacket and these sunglasses on. And that is a disguise. It is a way to shield herself, to protect herself, but also to show like, you know, she's not in superhero mode, but she's also not really in her full persona as well. It's kind of like this weird middle ground where like it's not wanting to be perceived.
Yeah, and like with the sunglasses especially because, you know, the eyes are a window to the soul, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And now she's got the shades on,
and
so
you can't
it's
see
like
her
a barrier.
eyes at all.
You can't see her eyes. You can't see if she's like looking left, whatever, like some kind of weird ass psychology that I know people could use to interpret. So, and Karen can't actually see that window, you know, into her soul.
Oh, but she
has to rely on everything else that they've built in their relationship. And that's why it's not as
it's the horrifying ordeal of being known. That's exactly what it is. She's like,
Karen
do not
does know
perceive her. Me while I tell you this thing that I know is going to make you unhappy because you know me so well. I hate it here.
It's Hen's way of hiding from herself and some of her actions that she knows are not going to be seen in the best light. And it's also maybe her feeling like a little bit of shame. So you have to kind of like, you know, hide.
Yeah.
It's hiding from Karen, but it's also in essence hiding from yourself because that's what a disguise is.
It's shame because it's like, I feel like she knows
she better.
Should be able to like let this go, but she can't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's it. Yeah. I really loved that kind of like visual language of that, bringing home like the superhero aspect a little bit.
Speaking of literal superheroes, we've got Buck. We've got
our
Buck
baby
to the rescue.
Superbuck to the rescue.
We've got Superbuck to the rescue. So it opens up with, we finally get to see that, well, where Buck lives, I guess, temporarily for one episode. We'll never see those people ever again.
Do we even see him living there? We just see him dropping off bags and leaving immediately.
And we see his bed, but you know what I called it? I said it was like a frat house, but maybe it's more like a frat home.
I think it's a frat home. Actually, you know what I thought? Like, for a second, I was like, is this the same, like, I don't know why it gave me like this air, but is it the same?
The same set as like the sorority house set?
Sorority house set. No.
Oh, with
the Hoover, the dog.
Oh, I don't remember. But maybe you're right. Maybe it's better than what I was thinking, because I was like, is this Eddie's house? But they're like, anyway, I'm sorry.
It was not.
It was not. I just want to connect things.
I
connected the dots. You didn't connect shit.
I'm just here.
We're trying so desperately to make it about Eddie.
Yeah, I didn't connect shit. Sorry. Anyway,
back to Buck. It's interesting because we do finally see his home life, because so far he's just been Buck the firefighter. We haven't seen him pretty much anywhere else. And it's like,
he is at home too.
Oh, he does have a home, which is, I guess, reassuring. Because I kind of thought he would just hang out at the firehouse.
I think as much as possible, like a lost puppy.
Honestly,
like the minute he walks in, they're like, oh, he's a firefighter. So it's like he still is not a person.
That's Buck. He's a fireman.
That is his, and that is his entire identity. I know we've talked about this kind of previously in a couple of the other episodes, but he literally does not have anything else, and we see why now, because that is not a frat home.
Not it.
And it's just kind of like awful, and there's no like hominess, no like way that he can kind of relax and take off that persona of being a fireman. And so like Buck's superhero identity is his entire identity, and he lives in it. There is no Clark Kent for him. It's just Buck the firefighter. And like I think it's really interesting, even on his off days, you know, he's just spent probably a 24-hour shift or a 48-hour shift at the station, you know, being the hero and fighting fires and doing all this stuff. And he goes home and he directly goes into helping Abby look for her mom. So he leaves the station in hero mode. He goes home and he's still in hero mode, and he goes like on his entire adventure with Abby, and neither of them are working. And it just shows that they, and I think this kind of just occurred to me in a similar vein that Buck's only identity is his superhero identity. I think Abby's is too, and she kind of, but out of I saw you roll your eyes, but kind of out of necessity, where she doesn't necessarily want to have to live in that identity, but because that's what her job is and that's what she has to do at home, she doesn't get an opportunity to take that persona off. So where Buck is, Abby wants to take it off and she just can't.
So you know what I thought about just now? Because my brain does funny things when you guys are talking. So I know we've been talking about superheroes this entire time, and I am not of the Buck and Abby agenda, but I was just thinking about Aladdin and Jasmine.
Love to know how you got there.
Please elaborate. I need to know.
Let's take a trip inside Syl's mind.
Well, I can show you the world. Are you guys there yet? Are you guys walking
who
with
is
me?
Saying that to whom?
Buck.
Buck is saying it to Abby, obviously.
Yeah.
She can't show him shit. She doesn't go anywhere. She doesn't do anything.
And the Jeep is the magic carpet. Because they're having their whole conversation in the car, blah, 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 blah.
I can show you LA.
I can show you LA. I can show you a day of like what I do as a firefighter, you know? Because like she's always like, she's at home, she's taking care of her mom. And then
it's like wish fulfillment.
Yeah, and like the thing is like slightly different and slightly kind of but like, you know, they're in the middle of trying to look for their mom. So this doesn't relate to Jasmine and Aladdin, but it kind of does. So they're in the middle of looking for her mom, but then they like hear in the police scanner that, you know, the little girl fell electric pool. That's what I'm going to call it. Electric pool.
That is what I also call it.
Electric pool. So, you know, they hear that there's an emergency and they're like, yeah, let's go. And for me, that's like Abby saying, I never get to see what happens during these freaking calls. So Buck is going to show her the world outside of her dispatcher role.
Yeah. He even looks at her like, really?
Like,
Because
are you serious?
We're out here trying to find your mother. Your mother.
Yeah, he was trying to stay on task for once. Like
he was
not getting distracted, and she was like, I think that speaks to Abby's character of like she can't sit idly by when there's like a crisis, which kind of speaks to, you know, superhero responsibility stuff.
And like, you know, I guess equating her to Jasmine, like it's exhilarating. I mean, Jasmine got to take her little magic carpet ride, and she got to see the whole world outside of the palace. And then Abby is kind of like, I get to experience, and she gets to help out too. Which like actually hands-on help out and not like on the other line. Yeah.
It's her ingenuity that saves the day. I see it. I get it. I love your brain.
Yeah, no, that was great.
I showed you guys the world.
You did.
You truly did.
Showed us that
Thank
metaphor.
You're welcome.
I can show you a metaphor. Cool. Before we get to the pool scene, I do think we need to talk about when Buck and Abby meet in person for the very first time.
Yes.
Or at least I have a few things to say.
Let Rachel cook. I already cooked,
but I don't like I don't like this food.
Well, suck it up.
Open up. I'm feeding you anyway.
No, I don't like it, Mom.
You're gonna like what I say because it's interesting. All right.
Okay.
I wonder if you're gonna say there was this one thing about. I know you're gonna talk about them meeting for the first time, but like there's just one thing that kind of like I'm gonna give some food to Han as a snack because
it's like a reward.
I will say that this is also on a little bit of a twisted side. Like I also interpreted the whole show me
meeting?
Not the meeting, like with the seeing how Buck works during that kind of emergency while she was also trying to look for her mom. Like I also felt like this could be interpreted as a way of how she did kind of used Buck and then kind of left him at the end of the season. So it's a little bit.
Listen,
and also,
I could write
wait,
a
shut up,
fucking college thesis on that.
Shut up. Well, okay, so it's kind of like using him to get, you know, eyes on this outside world that she doesn't really get to experience, because again, it's her mom, the dispatcher role. She's kind of always behind some kind of wall that she can't really see, so she's using him. And at the end, because I don't want to talk about the finale, but like, you know, at the end, like he showed her the world. I'm not landing this the way I wanted to, but like, but you know, she leaves.
Am I allowed to speak?
In the ocean?
No.
Am I allowed to speak?
Not yet. Hold on. There was something else I wanted to say. And it's a little bit like, I don't want to say selfish because like Buck wants to help her, but Buck is also off. Like he should not be working, and yet he is working. But I mean, that's what he does best. He's superhero.
He is superhero.
Oops. He is superhero. Anyway, you may speak.
His job is hero. Okay,
His
so
job is fire.
I'll just do the TLDR version of my Abby hate is hating Abby for Buck, and how she treats Buck. Okay, I don't hate her as a character. I just hate that. okay? and so this is the TLDR of this episode.
Can't wait to do that in season 7, but anyway.
This is what you missed on Glee. Is that, yes, Buck does want to be there for her, and, you know, she lets him, which is not wrong, but, like, in the midst of him trying to help her, you know, they answer a call, which, again, like, Buck would want to do anyway, so not a huge deal, except that it very much was wish fulfillment for her to be able to be on the scene of something like that, and, like, to be the person who saves the day, and to be the hero, and she kind of used him as the conduit, as the vessel made that happen. And then, you know, he continues to try and help her the whole day passes, you know, it's deep into the night. We don't know how late. And then he goes, you know, takes her to the hospital, takes her and her mom home. And then he's waiting, and he's very sweet to her mom, even though, like, he looks awkward and like he doesn't know what to do. And, you know, he's waiting in the kitchen, you know, to talk to her before he leaves. And what does she say? I think it's best if we don't see each other again.
Wah, wah. Hey, that's my signature. That's tapping.
Yeah, so she's like, I don't think we should see each other again, because if we did, because I like you. And at that point, I'm like, okay, but he told you that he had issues with intimacy, and that, like, you know, he didn't want to ruin something without, like, before it started. But obviously there is something there, and, like, you've built it to the point that he dropped everything to come and help. I mean, like, he would do that for anyone, but you know, that he did this, and you let him, and you got along, and, you know, things are still good. So, like, what is...
It's her not trusting herself.
Well, sure, whatever, but he looks like a fucking kicked puppy, and I hate her for it, and that's it. That's the end of the story, is that it just feels like at every fucking turn, like she is using him and not taking into account his feelings and him being a person. She just looks at him like he is a firefighter who is exciting and hot. She doesn't see
the Clark Kent behind the Superman.
Exactly.
Interesting. I know someone else that's using him right now. And I'll leave.
She said, "That's my exit. I gotta go."
You're not wrong.
You're not wrong.
I mean, that is where those parallels happen.
Very much paralleling. The parallels are paralleling and on purpose.
I've said that kind of from the beginning, that they are another Abby. Anyways,
I said that first.
You did.
I'm sorry.
I hopped on board.
Thank you.
It's okay.
Thank you.
So yeah, I don't know. I just wish that she could be a grown-up and just, you know, either fucking admit that she, like, wants to have a thing with him, and, like, be open and honest with it, and just fucking bite the bullet, and, you know, instead of, like, leading him around, and, like, actually, like, put time and investment into caring about him as a person, other than just, like, someone who shows up for, like, her needs and enjoyment, you know, or that she would just be like, let's just be friends. Because that, like, let's go back to just talking wasn't like, let's just be friends. It was like, let's go back to the weird, ambiguous thing we had before. Let's go backwards. Yeah. And I don't know. I'm sorry. Fuck that. Fuck her for that.
Rachel.
I mean, what?
You have the floor, is what I was going to say.
Oh. I mean,
I feel like we derailed from the first meeting.
We did. I can talk about it after. I have thoughts about it, okay? But I do want to just, like, devil's advocate a little bit here.
Oh, of course you do.
God.
I know you're going to tell me where she is, and that's fine.
It's true, though.
You can be in weird fucking places in your head and still not treat people around you like they are, like, just accessories.
No, I
let Rachel cook.
I mean, I'm gonna let her cook. I know what she's gonna say, probably, but let's go. Let's go. I'll sit here like a good girl.
I mean, I agree with you on most on like all of those points. I like Abby as a character. I don't like her for Buck. I think I'm just really, I guess I'm just like more intrigued by their relationship than I feel any like strong hate against it. I think because I think I think it's just an interesting window into both of their characters and how they interact with each other because you're right, she doesn't really see him for a person beyond superhero firefighter Buck. But at the same time, that is kind of what we've gotten so far. I mean, we've gotten glimpses, like a little peek through the window into there's more yet, but that hasn't been developed because I don't think Buck has developed it in himself yet. I think he's on his way to.
No, it's just that, you know, sure, like maybe he, like his whole life is being a firefighter right now, but he still has a personality and he is still a human. And she could like, I don't know, it's like that whole thing when like women go on dates and they're like, the guy didn't ask me one single question. Not to bring Chapel Roan
and
into this
he
again,
was wearing these fugly jeans. Buck would never. He got style.
Especially season 7 Buck.
Thank you, wardrobe department.
Yes.
No, I'm not saying he doesn't have a personality. I'm saying like his identity is so tied to his job that he does again he the way he portrays himself in the show is that there is no Clark Kent part of him. There is only Superman. So like in essence, I can understand why Abby only sees like that more shallow, but the fact that she doesn't try to dig deeper, I think is where the problem or where the clash lies in that aspect, you know, because we know like as humans there's always more under the surface of that, but she isn't digging deep enough to get through the ice on that, right?
She's not even trying to scratch the surface.
Yeah, I guess this isn't really as much of a devil's advocate as a yes and. Because like I agree with you,
but you're right. But you're right because I mean I don't remember too much of the conversation they had in the car, but I don't really think that she delved any deeper into Buck's personal life. Just
every conversation he's asking her questions. You know, he's trying to learn about her. He's trying to engage with her, and it's just like it all just feels so very one-sided.
Yeah. And okay, I guess this is where the devil's advocate comes into play. It's because she's, and I'm not excusing it or anything, because like if this were a real person and not a fictional character, this would be a really crappy thing for someone to do. But she's like so wrapped up in her own world and being the superhero for her world. And again, she also doesn't really have a regular person persona. She has to be the superhero for like at Dispatch and for her mom at all times. She also lives in that superhero persona. So maybe in essence that is kind of what's preventing her from going deeper with anyone else. Truly, it's because she can't open herself up. She's also like not trusting herself to open up in a weird way, because she's opening up her personal life with like finding her mom and telling Buck about her mom to him, but that's not really anything about her. That's about her situation. That's about like her day to day, but that's not, again, it's kind of like a surface level. It's not going any further. So while she's opening up enough for him to think that for Buck to think that she's allowing him in, it's really not that deep.
No, it's not. I was just going to say, the parallels are paralleling.
No, there was a parallel, though. I just thought about it just now. So I think it's one of their last scenes where she thanks him. I'm thinking about like the first episode. So, you know, when... okay, sorry, I'm getting too excited. because I don't know if I've connected anything. You guys are going to tell me if I connected shit or not. So I literally just had a small brain blast, and I was thinking about how, like, they both thanked each other. So, like, in the first episode of season 1, he's thanking her. He's telling her that she's a hero.
Yeah.
And that she should be there and all that kind of stuff. And now it's kind of like, this is her turn of saying, hey, thank you. You know, basically, you're my hero for helping me with my mom and all this other stuff. So I was just like, oh, the parallels, like, it comes full circle. That's it.
Yeah. Those are dots. You connected them 100%. They're connected.
You did.
Yeah, I feel like I do my best work when I'm on the spot.
No, that's great. But that is like a good point too, because they thanked each other like a victim who was just saved by a superhero would thank the superhero, right? As like Superman flies away or something like that. Like, gee, thanks.
Gee, thanks.
Gee Louise, thank you.
Gee Willikers. Thanks, Superman. Insert superhero of choice there.
Oh, man. Well, the parallels I was thinking are like to his current relationship, but also not really the parallel, but like just calling, this is going to be my last Abby hate thing, and then we can move on. Or you guys can continue, but I will
bow out.
Sexy silence.
Oh, Jensen Ackles.
You can't do that when I'm drinking.
Didn't know you were drinking. My eyes were closed.
I literally almost spit out my whole drink.
Sorry.
And I was over on the side, so I don't know if you saw, but my eyes like bugged out. I was like,
no, my eyes were closed because I was thinking about what I was going to say.
Continue.
I just feel like Buck glommed on to her calling him in episode 2 and saying, and feeling like he was seen, right? And feeling like the actual him, not the superhero, but the him who was struggling, who, you know, everyone kept calling him, you're a hero. You're a hero, Superman. You're a hero, Captain America. You're a hero, Iron Man. And all heroes, like, if they lose someone, even if they saved all these other people, they are going to feel guilty. They are going to be going through it. And especially if it's your first loss. And he kept feeling like no one was seeing him. And then he was like, oh my God, this woman sees me. And she like cared enough to like find my number and call me and ask me if I'm okay. And I feel like he has just glommed onto that. And like, that is the only shred of like the kind of interest and care that like you should see from like an equally interested partner we ever see from her. And it was 3 episodes ago.
You got points. Can't argue with them. Okay, can I talk just a little bit about their meeting and then we can go into the pool?
Yeah, of course.
Yes.
Because I think you're gonna like what I'm gonna say. So
the water's nice.
Jump on in. Okay, so I'll try to make this like as brief as I can, but I have a little bit of notes about it. Okay. So after only having a relationship via phone for 4 whole episodes, we finally get to see Buck and Abby meet. And in an episode when we're talking about like superheroes, secret identities, all that stuff, when Buck knocks on the door, we know Carla opens, but he's like, Abby. And it's a classic mistaken identity trope that we see so much in superhero stuff. And it's, I mean, that their whole meeting is kind of like an unmasking in a way. And it's just
like, you can call me Abby if you want to.
Carla's like, I wish I was Abby. But it's that like mistaken identity because, I mean, realistically, they've never like really seen it. Well, he's never seen Abby. Abby has seen him on TV and everything. So she kind of already has like an up on him. But it's just so great where identities and superheroes sort of things are a key theme that when they finally meet it and they get to remove like these masks of who they've established themselves to be over the phone. And it gives them an opportunity to truly know each other. And we kind of already discussed that the truly know each other is really only so far as like their own superhero personas go as deep. So even though they kind of both live in their superhero identities for different reasons, are they able to know each other or to be with each other outside of an emergency? Because it's always an emergency with them, right? Their entire relationship is established on emergency. And we'll see that continue as we go through. But even as they meet in person for the first time, the way they said their names to each other kind of like relays this established connection. So it's taking, you know, when Abby actually comes to the door and Buck's like Abby and Abby's like Buck, and it's that connection where they're kind of like transforming it from just over the phone to in person, and there's a little bit of, you know, there's often like a weird transition with that kind of stuff. But for them it's not so much because they're in emergency mode, which they so often are. So there's not really room. I think if it were just the two of them, again, if they were able to dive under their superhero identity personas.
What's their first date?
Oh, what? God. Oh, we're not there yet. I'm going to have so much to say about that.
What? That's going to be the scene dissection.
The first date. Oh, please. Actually, which is not yet.
Glad we agreed. Anyway.
Yeah. So like, they're immediately in work mode, essentially. Like they greet each other and they go right into work mode. So Abby has set up, you know, the maps, basically doing what she would do at dispatch with, you know, locationing and everything like that. But I just wanted to point out, like, Buck has like a look on his face when he's watching Abby explain, you know, her strategizing, and he's not looking directly at Abby. I think he's kind of like, or Abby's not looking directly at him, but he's kind of admiring her when she's explaining like her search field and everything. And it's kind of like impressed.
Yes, he is impressed.
/ in awe, like getting to watch her in action, because they've, again, you know, that thing where you have a friendship or a relationship with someone and you don't get to see them as often. And when you're in the same, much like we are, but when you're in the same vicinity, and you're like there in person with them, it's like, it's exciting, it's exhilarating, it's kind of like, oh my gosh, you're here, I'm here, we're existing in the same space.
We're real and corporeal, and
you're real. You take up mass is a thought that I have actually thought to myself before.
Rachel, what?
No, seriously.
Oh
Welcome
my God.
To my brain.
You're so cute.
Anyways, so he has like this really sweet kind of like moment where the camera is looking at him, looking at her, and he's just kind of like, wow, she's a superhero, essentially. And I just thought that was really cute.
You know what I'm gonna tie that into?
What?
What?
No.
A pool?
No.
I'm gonna stop myself.
Oh.
No, don't. Oh. Well, oh.
So, like, kind of like to what she's saying, it's kind of like the same look that Buck gives Eddie when Eddie is doing the thing in the first episode that he's in, where he's like, he has to take the air out of the guy that had the thing, and he's like, impressed. It's the
competency kink.
That
Buck
do
and
pop
all
out.
Of us have in common.
It's true.
Wow, Buck is one of the girls.
Just like us for real.
Anyways, so that's essentially what I had for their first meeting. I just wanted to point that stuff out.
Hey! Where's the fire? So I will take that and I will lead us directly into the pool scene, because he gives her, I mean, not to like skip through the whole pool scene, but I want to directly connect that, is afterward, when he's like, he like grabs her hand when they're like walking out after they saved the day and the firefighters show up and he's holding her hand and then he like looks at it and she's like, what? And he's like, nothing, lets it go. And then later in the car, he's explaining how like, okay, so when I was looking at your hands, it's because like the first couple times I was on the job because of adrenaline, like my hands were shaking and, it's just like your body's natural response from the adrenaline. And, I was looking at yours and like they were just
steady.
Completely steady. And what did he say? He said full Jedi something. He's such a nerd. I love him.
You're a full-on Jedi.
Did he say exactly that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like you're a full-on Jedi.
Yeah.
He's a big nerd. So
many Star Wars references. Nerd. But yeah, so he's definitely impressed with her. And like, I don't want to say in awe, but he's very much like, he has never had a connection like this with someone, and especially someone who like is, because Abby is impressive.
Yeah.
She's very smart. She's very capable. Like, she's very quick on her feet.
She's very good at her job.
So yeah, of course, like I totally get it. I get it, Buck.
Was that hard? Was that so hard? I'll take that as a yes.
I mean, I get it because
also it's Connie Britton. Like,
yeah, it is.
She's lovely.
I mean, yeah, like I get it. I don't know if I've ever expressed I think you guys know, but not on the podcast. But yes, I have a thing for redheads. So yes, I get it, Buck. But also,
you get it, but you hate it.
I get it, but I hate it because it's like he doesn't know, and I want to say he doesn't know yet. He still doesn't know yet, like what he deserves.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And is just accepting whatever is given to him.
Yeah.
And it makes me angry when people don't treat him the way that he deserves.
Correct.
That's all.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I think, so still talking about the pool situation.
Yes. Sorry, the pool.
No, it's fine. This is all, this is all like a kind of slightly messy scene dissection, but it's fine. It's cool.
Dissections get messy.
They sure do. But Tiss, let's continue.
We've
Please.
already cannonballed into the pool, which would be ouchie.
So we're dead?
Yeah, we died. We're done. I think we're done.
It wouldn't be ouchie. It'd be just lights out.
Wait. I'm sorry, but the amount of times Buck is around like something that gets a like sparky electrocuted-y.
Stop!
It's like the worm crawl away.
So dramatic.
Jail. So much jail.
I know.
I'm dead. Oh my god.
What am I trying to say about this stupid pool?
I have things to say about the pool, but I keep getting distracted.
You were saying something about electricity?
Oh yeah. Buck and electricity.
Oh, that was just like a complete aside that I just thought of like just now. But okay. If we're talking one of the themes is a collapsing foundation or like shifting sands or not solid ground. Pool water is very fluid.
Yeah.
There's something there about like unsteady ground and floating or sinking and
mm-hmm. I'm picking up what you're putting down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It just I feel like that goes with that,
Yeah.
A little bit.
Yeah.
And then just, the fact I think we mentioned is the fact that they decide to go and help out as good Samaritans is, it's a classic superhero versus regular identity dilemma to pass by an emergency and not act and help.
Mm-hmm.
That's why all of them wear their superhero uniforms like underneath their clothing so they can like and like jump into action with that sound effect. Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And that just goes to reinforce my idea that, they don't really have a disconnect between their regular identity and their superhero identity because and it goes again to a sense of like superhero responsibility, right? Because they were working on finding Abby's mom and that was priority number one, but for them to pass by this kind of emergency and know that they could help and not do anything, would they have been able to live with themselves? And the answer is no. So they go and they help. And yeah, it's Abby's ingenuity that, like, you know, you really get to see her in action too.
Yeah. So we
take it away, Han.
So we get to see Buck be Buck. His solution immediately is to grab
the orca.
A whale floaty that would not have held his even season 1 beefy ass up out of the water.
It was giving very much like him going at the wall with the hammer, right?
With the axe, yeah.
Or the axe, excuse me.
But he was just like, you know, but I think like when kids especially are in danger, he is just like, it's instant panic mode, like fix it.
They always pair him up with kids.
I know.
Continue.
But anyway, so he's like literally ready to just fucking like kill himself and just be in the you know, the pool with the nanny or whoever who, I mean, like one step above the nanny who just jumped in. Which was because he tried to help her. He jumped in and Buck was like, oh, I will go on this whale floaty. And she's like, are you fucking insane? And the answer is yes. But she says something like, did you get that out of the Macho Handbook? And he very seriously is like, there's no way that book exists. So, which I had to pause. I was laughing so hard because I was like, it's not even him being like flippant. It's literally him just being like, there's no way that book exists. Because, and this is just me, maybe this is fanon, maybe this is like future knowledge of Buck, where it's just like fun fact Buck, where he's like, he does his like deep dive research shit and he just has like all these facts and he's like, I would know.
Yeah, like the Rolodex of his brain.
Like he's Googled Macho Handbook and knows it doesn't exist. Or something, you know what I mean? So it just, I don't know.
He's so cute.
He's so fucking cute.
So cute. So dumb sometimes.
So dumb. But like then
Smart but dumb.
Yes, but he immediately trusts her when she's like, stop. And then trusts her to like, you know, take charge and do a plan that actually won't get him killed.
Thank goodness. This show would have been over a lot sooner.
Yeah. And then they, you know, after that little false start there, that they work together really easily because they're both kind of like in their element of, I mean, kind of new to her, but not really. It's just kind of like being on the scene instead of, see, it's the corporeal thing again, where it's like she's been through a lot of emergencies, but never actually been there.
Yeah, and she's tapping into her dispatch knowledge because, I mean, there's a guide for everything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
They've kind of already developed like a working rapport essentially, and this is just like transferring it over into in person, which to be fair, doesn't always translate.
No,
but for them it does, and it works.
It's kind of like, God damn it, I need to stop.
Never stop.
I was just gonna say, it was kind of like, give him a partner, but not that one. Oh, come on. You guys know I'm always going to tie it back to Mr. Edmundo Noches.
It's fine. I will do it as well.
Because he does work better when there is a check to his, like a check and a balance to him.
Mm-hmm.
And we see that when he's...
It doesn't exist in his brain. He needs an external source.
He does need an external one. And that's why, like, when he and Bobby finally got off on the right foot, it worked so well. That's why Hen and Chim are their own partners. So, like, essentially, he does need that check to his balance. And that's why he works so well with partner.
Soon, Buck. Soon.
I don't know that I had that much more about the scene that was, like, directly about the pool. Yeah, no, it's just more of the same. Just more of them immediately getting out of the car, running, splitting up, like handling the different people who were out on the street, and then, you know, running just like seamlessly together, like to go follow back to like the original call location. So it's just more of the symbiosis of them just working well together and having like...
That's a great way to put it.
And having some, you know, that level of trust from like the foundation of trust that they built from their phone calls.
Yeah.
And their trust in like each other's knowledge and expertise and like skill, for sure.
I'm glad you guys brought that back up to the themes because I have officially lost the plot. Is that hour?
It's fine. No, I think that makes so much sense. Like, they do have a sense of trust there, and that makes for a great foundation for a partnership. Maybe we'll see if it's more of a romantic foundation or not. And I really like the line, like, afterwards. You mentioned, Han, you mentioned him talking about the adrenaline and her hands weren't shaking, but he describes it like, you know, the adrenaline in emergency situations keeps your mind focused, it dulls pain, it makes you super strong. It's a superpower, essentially. So for them to, like, be able to tap into their superpowers like that is, I mean, it's just cool to see, like, in general.
Also, another great example, like that line of him just, like, his facts. His fun little facts.
Yeah.
His info dumping. I love him.
So when they finally get to Abby's mom, or she's been found, it was the three men that found Abby's mom, Pat, and brought her to the hospital. I think there's, again, kind of like with Ava, there might be preconceived notion because you see these are three guys, they're dressed kind of tough, they have all of these tattoos. So as an audience member, you get, like, this preconceived notion from their outward, you know, identity, even from just their few lines, and they really speak about they had a lot of empathy and compassion because they know from firsthand experience with their abuelita who also had Alzheimer's, that, like, they were able to kind of figure out what to do. So that's also kind of a like a level of trust and openness between strangers, essentially, right?
Mm-hmm.
Again, kind of like unmasking this outward identity to show something softer underneath in that way. That's kind of how I tied it to it.
Yeah. Also, you know, tying this back into kind of like a collapse in foundation, or like a fracture, they do kind of basically foreshadow. I mean, we all know with Alzheimer's, I mean, it's never going to get better, but, like, think about how, like, Abby spent her day being shown LA. Huh? Rhymed. Anyway, I'm sorry.
Incredible. Good work.
You know, but
comedy elbows.
You know, so she's being shown, I guess, the outside world, LA, what she can do outside of taking care of her mom. So, like, she's on this, like, adrenaline, like, going back to what you said, Han, like, has all this adrenaline, she's got this high, and then it's like the rug gets, you know, once they find her mom, like, it's like the rug was pulled right from under her feet, and it's like we're back to this reality that she still has to take care of her mom, and it's not going to get better.
I also think, to tie in another theme, that it is a very different way of looking at the horrifying ordeal of being known, where it's a stranger can, you know nothing about you, but have such a similar personal experience that they can connect to you, like, very deeply without knowing anything about you other than what you're going through or what you're going to go through. So it's very much like, you know, he's like, this happened with my abuelita and it's not going to get better. Like, I'm so sorry to say. And, you know, yeah.
No, that's a great way to put it. It just as a human connection.
Yeah.
As a baseline, like we do not have, what is it that people say on the interwebs nowadays? I've never had an original experience once in my life.
Yeah.
It's like everyone has something that they can relate to, which builds trust as well.
Yeah, and it's an immediate way to have empathy and a direct line to you know, knowing someone without knowing anything about them.
And then I did want to also mention, like, when they're back at Abby's house, you know how I mentioned when Buck first gets to Abby's apartment and he mistakes Carla for Abby. I mean, this is more in line with Alzheimer's, but
I know what you're gonna say.
But Abby's mom also has there's another case of mistaken identity. This one is a little more like, you know, kind of expected almost. I know what you guys are laughing about. And I think that is very interesting. But Pat mistakes Buck for Tommy, Abby's old boyfriend as well.
Mm-hmm.
Which is just like another one of those. I don't know. I feel like there's something about mistaken identity, specifically with Abby and Buck here, that they won't be able to like kind of get past in their relationship. I don't know. There's something there. For sure. Like,
there's foreshadowing.
Yeah. Like
this is not gonna vibe.
Yeah. I think from what we said earlier that like they can't really push past that beyond that superhero persona of theirs. Like they can't get to the underneath. And then I think one of the themes that I mentioned briefly was change and, you know, how things can change so rapidly and kind of like in a snap, but how they contemplate this change in their relationship. And I know, Han, you said that Abby just kind of like shut it down and said, I think we should just go back to being phone buddies. And I wanted to pose like, could you ever? Like, you know, once something has changed, like they've already changed it. They've changed their relationship by Buck going to her and helping and meeting her and helping her. They trauma bonded. Let's be real. Their relationship is just trauma bonding.
Yeah.
So like it's already changed. And once something changes, can it change back? Or can something be unchanged? You know, and I don't think it really can.
Yeah, when it's a drastic change like that, I don't think they can go back to what they were doing before. It doesn't. You finally got to see, or the identity has been revealed. You can't unsee this person. You can't undo the.
You can't like put the toothpaste back in the tube.
Yeah, you can't undo the feelings that you've experienced while you were doing what you guys were doing during the day. There's no way they could have gone back to just being phone buddies.
Well, yeah, and it is literally moving backwards. And in any relationship, whether it is romantic or platonic, moving backwards is not a thing.
No.
That denotes a healthy relationship that's going to flourish and survive. If you know, I don't know. It's just like everything and everyone is always changing. And if you can't like move forward and evolve in your relationship with the other person, then what are you doing? Like what?
Yeah.
It's very, I don't know. It's all just very telling of like, I think that these two kind of needed each other in this moment in their lives.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yes.
For what it was. But Buck thought it was something else because it was very different from the very shallow connections he had before. But it really was just kind of a friendship, but not.
Yeah.
Because friendships are two-sided.
No, and I agree. I feel like his relationship or whatever this is supposed to be, it's a stepping stone for him and for her.
Yeah.
So
yeah. That's true, and I think that's kind of summed up from the quote at the very beginning with the Indian wedding, where I think it was the groom that said that marriage is supposed to change you. I would go as far to extrapolate on that that relationships in general, platonic, work, professional, everything is okay. Nothing happens in a vacuum, right? Like our identities. Who we are is so much also like beyond just like the core part of ourselves. It's also like a summation of other people, right? So we are there's a turn of phrase that I'm trying
some
to
of our parts.
Not that one. But in essence, like we're ever changing. And we're always changing depending on who or what we surround ourselves with, right?
Yeah.
So everything not only is like your foundation of relationships, like things that can be like a rug that can pull. Life is like a shifting sand sort of thing, where everything is is fluid. Everything has effect on something else, if that makes sense.
Well, yeah, and I think in essence, it's like if you have a real relationship with anyone, platonic, romantic, whatever, where you are yourself, they are their selves, you learn from each other, you change, even though like your core person stays the same, you are learning things, and that is adding on to how you perceive the world, how you interact with them and other people.
It's an opportunity to grow together and change together.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We got there. There was a quote that I'm refraining from using from Black Sails.
Black Sails?
Yeah.
Do it.
I kind of borrowed the phrase of shifting sands, but there's a quote from Black Sails, and it says, "Sand has its virtues. On sand, nothing is fixed, nothing is permanent, and fates change so quickly." So I kind of put that as like, you know, under that like thing of change and theme of, you know, having the rug pulled out from you, but also like just being human and kind of relating to other people and how people affect you and how you affect others outside of yourself, and kind of goes into something like that, if that makes sense.
It does.
I liked that quote. There's also another quote from Black Sails that relate to the horrors of being known, and I thought was really beautiful. If you will let me say that very quickly, and then we can move on. Okay, so it's related because this character also kind of like keeps their past like kind of close to the chest. They may give a story, but that's maybe not the whole truth. And they say, "You know of me all I can bear to be known." And I'm just like, talk about the horrors of being known and perceived.
Talk about Bobby. Oof.
Yeah, and I thought that was just like a great.
Yeah, that is a great line.
It's such a good line. It's because like Black Sails is all about like stories and narratives, but who's in charge of the narrative, and the narrative that you tell about your own story, but also that is told about you and that kind of stuff. So it's one of the best shows. People need to watch it. There's also already a wonderful podcast called Fathoms Deep. They're amazing. And I love them so much. And they're so smart. Yeah. Watch Black Sails.
We're gonna need the jaws of life over here.
Deep dive?
Yeah, I don't really have anything except that the wedding hall disaster is possibly based off of a thing that actually happened. There was a Versailles wedding hall disaster in Jerusalem in 2001 where something very similar happened. But yeah, it was a wedding, and there was a huge collapse and lots of fatalities and injuries.
Ooh.
So it might have been based off of that. Yeah.
Was that also caused by
faulty equipment?
Not kept up to code things?
Yeah, it was definitely like they ruled out like terrorism or like
well, that's
like foul play. Yeah. So it was, I mean, still not good, but you know.
Better?
Yeah, I guess. Wasn't quite nefarious. It was just like intentional neglect, I guess. Yeah. Don't cut corners when it could cost people their lives. Just a thought.
Yeah.
So I did like a quick Google, and there was something about a study about shared laughter, and I didn't read all of it because that's a lot of sciencey words, but I read the abstract, which is the most important part of you know, like it's like an actual scientific paper, and the title is "Putting Laughter in Context: Shared Laughter as Behavioral Indicator of Relationship Well-Being." So essentially it was studying not individual laughter, but shared laughter. I think it was between heterosexual couples, like when they share in laughter together. And it studied how that kind of shared laughter, specifically with a romantic partner, but it goes to suggest that this is probably true of non-romantic as well, but that wasn't part of the study. But shared laughter, or time spent laughing simultaneously with a romantic partner, was uniquely positively associated with relationship quality, closeness, and social support. So essentially saying like, the way I took it was like shared laughter is a way to bond, and it helps build a stronger relationship just in general. And I think it just makes you like a happier person anyways. So I thought that was really interesting. I can have the link in the show notes if we want to include that. So if anyone's interested in that and can understand science research,
any scientist listeners want to break that down for us, like we're toddlers, that'd be great.
And then I wanted to talk a little bit about Fortress of Solitude, because I said I was going to earlier, and I just thought it was really interesting, not in terms of like the church being the new Fortress of Solitude, but in terms of when Bobby in the flashback in Minnesota, when Bobby goes up to the roof after he's locked out of his little bat cave. And one, it's cold, right? It's freezing. I don't know that they said what time of year it was, but there was snow on the ground. It's cold. It looked like it was kind of freezing. And how that is like a visual metaphor for the Fortress of Solitude. So in the Superman comics, where the Fortress of Solitude is, it's the place where Superman first learns about his true identity, his heritage, and his purpose on Earth. And the fortress functions as a place of solace or the occasional headquarters for Superman. And it's typically depicted, or is typically located in like some sort of polar area. I think most typically in the Arctic, although I think I've seen it's also been in the Antarctic, and basically somewhere like a big mountain where it's cold, right?
Yes.
So the Fortress of Solitude, as it was referred to as such, showed up in issue 58, which was the May-June issue in 1949. And so that was like the original entrance of the Fortress of Solitude in the Superman comics. But there's also in the Man of Steel miniseries from John Byrne in 1986, he kind of rewrote various aspects of like the Superman mythos, you know, how they kind of like reiterate. I got this from Wikipedia. I'm trying to paraphrase it. I'm sorry. I like comic books. I'm not as familiar with all of these. But, you know, in a reboot, they kind of like rewrite certain aspects of the superheroes. So in this Man of Steel miniseries, the Clark Kent persona was described as a Fortress of Solitude. So that took it from a physical place to a more like metaphorical, internal sort of
That's
thing.
Interesting.
And it allowed him to live as an ordinary person that he saw himself as and leave the Superman persona behind. So I thought that was really interesting too, when you take like the physical Fortress of Solitude and make it like an internal thing, because that was Clark Kent trying to divest himself of Superman, which kind of goes back into our idea of superheroes and their sense of responsibility and leaving that behind and that kind of thing. But also, like, when you think about it, Superman technically doesn't just have the two identities, Superman and Clark Kent. He has a third identity.
Kal-El. Yeah.
His like little alien identity. So there's like an extra layer. Which of those identities is the true identity? Like, he's not a superhero. He's not a regular human. He's something else entirely in his DNA. But at his core, he's like a very human character. And that's what I had about that. I just thought that was kind of interesting.
That is cool. I didn't know that about the 80s series. Very cool.
I didn't either, but now we learned stuff. We like comics too.
I do like comics. I'm not a huge Superman fan, so that's probably why I didn't know.
I mean, I'm more interested now.
So, that gay shit.
Love it.
Should have just called it that gay shit.
You should have just called it that gay shit for sure,
Slow
but that's
burn,
not.
AKA.
Hey, that gay shit. Yeah.
Hey.
So, again, we are still in the first season. We are just on the floor looking for the smallest of crumbs. So, bear with me. Okay? Just bear with me. So, we're back at the pool call. And Buck gets out of the car and runs up to that truck driver and is in his space immediately before he even is like, "Are you okay?" In his space, literally like as far away as I am from this microphone. And he grabs his hoodie like this. It's like, are you okay? And then like has his hands like right, like he's hovering, like he's gonna touch him, and the guy's like, oh, I'm okay. They just came out of nowhere. And then he's like, oh, Abby's running. I gotta run. So I was like, why are you in that? That's not normally like how you operate on a call. You're not like normally in someone's space like that. I mean, like he's not like a paramedic. So I guess we don't see him in that particular, like, checking someone over way very often. But, like, I paused and rewound it, like, 3 times just to make sure I wasn't actually just, like, he was in the vicinity of a male. And as they're running to the pool, he looks back twice. Yeah, so there's that.
Which could be nothing.
It could be nothing. Could be something. I don't know. Just his, like, how his subconscious, because he's in his fight or flight, adrenaline firefighter mode. And so that was like his natural response was just to be up in that man's space. And then he like tackled that dad to the ground and was straddling him. And I was like, you could have stopped him another way. I don't know. On the floor, looking for crumbs.
It was a choice.
It was a choice.
It was a choice. Because I also was like, dude, why?
This was extra.
That was very extra. You could have just been like, dude, no, stop. But Buck is gonna go full Buck.
Exactly.
I mean, the dad was kind of barreling in there, so like,
yeah,
he's always gonna go full Buck. That's one thing for sure. The first season, I feel like we should just call this like Hannah's red string corner because,
connecting dots.
I am trying to connect the dots. That's all.
It's something.
Well, that's great.
Sis says she's ready to be done.
All right. Well, I loved this episode. I love Buck. Not news, but
what?
I just feel like this is one of the first episodes where, like, if I had started in season 1, I would have been like, oh my God, this is my character.
Yeah.
I love him. Would die for him.
I feel like for the last 2 episodes where it was very focused on kind of like one major incident for each of those. I mean, the plane crash was like the only thing. And the one before that, it was Chimney, but it was also, there was more in there.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just glad that this episode gave us like a breath of fresh air, and it's like a lot more funnier, a little bit more lighthearted. It's still sad. You still got your Bobby like sad stuff, but like we got to see some funny stuff.
It was a return to form.
And it was more return to form. I was more, I felt more comfortable talking about this episode than the last 2. Actually, the last 3, now that I think about it, I was done with Let Go.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Maybe it's the fact that this episode is kind of where it finds its stride in the first season, I feel like. Because we're dealt like heavy blow after heavy blow after heavy blow.
Yeah.
For episodes 2, 3, and 4. And this one, I feel like we're kind of finding that balance between the really sad stuff, like Bobby's entire origin story, but also we get some of that levity that we know so well with the show with the car wash scene, which I don't know about you. Like laughter, I'm an infectious laugher. Like if someone's laughing, I will start laughing. Every time I watch that scene, I started.
It's really funny. Yeah.
I just laugh with them.
Yeah.
And, especially because this is like the midpoint of season 1, since there are only 10 episodes, like maybe this is where they're like, okay, we know we have like a formula. We kind of are hitting a little bit of a stride. Let's go.
Let's fucking go.
Let's go.
Also, I can't. Oh my God, I can't. What I was gonna say is, I also can't wait to see Chimney again. I miss him. Now I miss him.
Yeah,
because he's also another. He brings fun, and
he brings a spice.
He brings a spice.
He rounds out the not trio. What's plus 1?
The quad?
The squad?
The quattro formaggio?
Sure. The fam.
The fire fam.
The fire fam.
Yeah, and I think also like in some of the episodes that are coming up that we're going to see a lot of that this kind of like funniness come more into play too.
Yeah.
So
I laughed
I'm
a
looking
lot
forward to
during
that.
this episode. I really enjoyed it. Depressing, sad parts. But yeah, it balanced itself really well. It was enjoyable to rewatch 3 times and to talk about for 4 hours. So good job.
Oops.
We have been talking for 4 hours.
Yeah.
Well,
remember, don't visit your ex in prison.
but if you do,
take a buddy with you.
And your wife.
and your fucking
And your wife.
And your fucking wife.
Take her everywhere. She's got the brain cell.
Thank you for listening to the Buddy System podcast from start to finish.
We literally cannot shut up about 911, so please come talk to us on your favorite social media platform.
We're at Buddy System Pod everywhere. That's BUDDIE System Pod.
Leave a 5-star review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts to get a personal shout out in the next episode. The Buddy System is a Nerdvergent media production featuring music from Divinity.
Can't get enough of the buddies? Subscribe to our Patreon for access to exclusive content in our Discord community.
Catch you next time. And don't forget,
Bring a buddy with you.